We live in a world surrounded by technology. It encompasses our homes, livelihoods, medical, and entertainment. 50.8% of the world is female. Therefore, half of the people who use, make, and improve technology should be women. Except, in reality, it's less than half, far less. The ratio of men to women in most fields is massively unbalanced. 25.5% of computer and mathematical occupations are held by women, 16.2% in architecture and engineering, and 25% in motion graphics and animation. Why is this? Are women uninteresting from birth, or physically unable to work in these technically challenging fields? Is there an invisible gateway that stops women and other minorities from advancing into new developing industries?
A memo by James Damore addressing the growing policies by Google to increase diversity and transparency. He asks if these movements are putting people who are not qualified in positions of power. There is a worry. There is a worry in this age of Me Too, immigration, and enlightenment. New biases will arise against those who are in majority. He makes valid points about interviewing and hiring practices at large corporations, about how people actually will hire people who are not qualified for the sake of quotas. He then follows up with arguments about the biological reasons for women being less qualified for tech jobs. He puts forward that women's brains are meant less for math-based work, that they are affected by emotion more than men. Finally, he talks about how little drive or ambition women have, and therefore will have little to no want to be part of the senior leadership. If women are not naturally inclined and would be happier somewhere else, then there should not be a quota of women who have to be hired for a technical job. This would be a fantastic answer to our question about the gender gap in STEM fields. However, in a recent study by Carnegie Mellon University, they state, we see no evidence of gender differences in neural responses to mathematics content, neuron responses during educational video viewing, or rates of neural development for mathematical processes in early childhood. And in fact, we found statistical equivalence between boys and girls throughout the brain. Biologically, women are just as capable of mathematical and logical thought processes as men. Therefore, we can be sure that the reason for this imbalance has to be with environmental constructions of the differences between male and female brains.
Husband's field, he works in technology, he works for a software company, and he talks a lot about the fact that there are very few women in leadership positions in technology. My understanding is that there might be more women in entry-level positions, lower-paying positions within the company, but as far as working your way up to the higher-level positions or in executive class kind of positions, it's almost all completely dominated by men in the field of technology. And there are, I think, significant obstacles for women trying to achieve in the field of technology. For one thing, in our culture, we have ingrained sort of this belief that women are not naturally good at technology and that men are probably more naturally good at that. So that's something that would impact girls, young girls, right? Like that they would make choices believing that they're probably not going to be good at it anyway, because it's a boy thing. But also, I think that there is still sort of a significant, they call it like the old boys network in a lot of fields. And I think business is a field that has a lot of this, and technology is a field that has a lot of this, where middle to upper class white men have sort of attained positions and risen in companies because they have connections with other middle-class white men who have helped them along the way, who have sort of gotten them into these positions. It's just been a lot easier for them to get into these positions because they are like these people who are already in the positions, and they can go out to lunch with them, and in some cases they can go golfing with them. They can do all of those extra things to form bonds, and then that helps them to sort of rise in an industry because they're networking, right? Whereas for people of color and for women, it's much harder to break into that old boys network because for lots of reasons. I mean, one might be that you just aren't, as a woman, you might not be invited to those events because people would think like, oh, women don't like to golf, right? Or she's probably busy on the weekend because she's taking care of her children.
Hidden Figures, a nonfiction film about African American women in the American space program, is a fantastic example of how women have been involved in technological fields. The film depicts strategies they use to talk about and break down walls, keeping them from moving up the ranks in the space program. They show the place of women in the computer and STEM history, as well as the human history, by placing a man on the moon. One of the women in the movie was Katherine Johnson, a mathematician for NASA, in charge of the numbers behind the launch and landing of the first American in space. The movie tracks how she is restricted in her work and not allowed to advance. We see her taking charge of her workload and proving herself by taking a huge, near unsolvable problems and finding new solutions. She and her colleagues paved the way for women in NASA and were some of the first women recognized for their work, being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. But all of this is in the past. They fought the fight, and now we have equal rights, diversity programs, and a world where discrimination isn't a thing, right? Unfortunately, no. We still see huge imbalances in the STEM fields, which means we need more than just a first woman to get into these hard-to-reach places. We still have a fight for equal opportunity. If there is going to be an overarching change, we need to look into the remaining reasons for this discrepancy in power.
In the various fields. I mean, when you look at a field and there currently are far more men in the field than there are women, sometimes that may not be as appealing. I decided I want to be in submarines, and now when we look at it, we say they're equally capable, they're equally intelligent, they have all the abilities to be able to do the same thing as men on submarines. They met all of the physical requirements. You could say, well, why wouldn't they? Well, certainly you can see that, so that one individual would then be coming into an environment where they are one of. And so at that point, they're always going to be unique, and that in and of itself creates a difference in the environment. They don't become fully integrated in because they're always unique amongst all of their compatriots. So that would be one of the reasons that I saw could have potentially delayed or prevented, or I guess you could say reduced the interest early on. But as we built that out, bringing so that you brought in a group of women all at the same time, so that it was no longer a unique individual, but rather a group of women who had the full support of all the leadership on board, but they also had the support of peers, even on board the actual submarine itself. First, we began the process by integrating small numbers of female officers into the wardroom of a submarine. So 3 female officers come on board together, equal in responsibility, along with all but the commanding officer and the executive officer on board, and then 2 junior officers who were coming in through the nuclear pipeline, who were fully equally trained. A percentage of that group that allowed it, we started there. So then we began to look at how would we then expand that out to the whole of a submarine crew, and what would be a critical number that we needed to achieve to be able to create an environment on board that would be viable and provide an atmosphere that promoted the success of every individual. So rather than having a single female enlisted sailor who was by themselves in amongst the men, we wanted to create an environment where all of the women have an opportunity to succeed. And so to do that, we wanted to ensure that we had women who were coming in at all levels, a sufficient percentage of the overall crew. So we looked at the total number of sailors on board and said, how do we achieve a high enough percentage of the total number of sailors on board to be female, so that, again, they are not just a unique or special group on board, but they truly are a portion of the whole crew. And then two, we wanted to do that across all of the departments, across all of the divisions. We began that with a survey process overall. Now, surveys will tell you one set of data, because we went across the Navy and surveyed every female sailor in the Navy and asked them questions about the submarine force, and in the end asked them, would they be interested in the submarine force? And the initial results to that were overwhelming. I mean, the large, almost 1/4, when we asked people to actually sign up and go do that, the percentage was significantly lower than it was on the survey data. That's not unexpected. The beauty of it was we didn't get as many applications as we had hoped for, but the one thing that we found, we did get the one thing we really did want, which was we got an incredibly large number of high quality individuals who had a desire to make that step and do something that was unique and by all rights historic for the Navy to be able to bring women into the submarine force.
There is no singular action or policy to change this reality. However, encouraging young children to pursue math, science, art, and reading equally will start the next generation in the right direction. Act as an ally, letting minorities take on leadership roles. Respond to different types of leadership. Describe people with new vocabulary and look for different management styles. Men and women alike have been trained to put each other in their own boxes, with paths drawn out for them since birth. The world will be a better place for everyone who wants to pursue a career if they are judged solely on their own personal merits.